Hello, my name is Elise, and welcome to this interview with Anisa Rahim, one of our artists presently on display at the Alpha Art Gallery's exhibition, Shifted Nature. We will be going over some of her artistic process, as well as the pieces she graciously contributed to both our physical and online presentations. We're going to start off pretty casual. How are you today, Anisa?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So I'm curious to know how you choose the subjects for your artwork.
So I think I didn't quite start out as intentional as it now seems. I think at the time I was just subjects that I was interested, I was curious about. I started doing photography very early on in high school, and so I was really interested in pictures of people, particularly. So I was taking images of people I knew, and in that process, it's just sort of grown to be whatever captures me. But I do tend to focus a lot more on images of people and of places that are not, I think, quite.
Right, and what inspired you to choose photography, and do you work with other media?
So photography, I don't know what led to photography. I ended up taking like a photography class like back when I was, I don't know, 13. In that class, actually, a lot of it was working in the darkroom, and I really loved that process. So I love the process of negatives and being in the darkroom, and also seeing, how the images that you take, how they end up coming out actually in print, and the differences between them. So I think that's just that process I felt very magical to me, and that was really what drew me to wanting to use photography as a medium, and particularly using film as the way to capture it, which was all, of course, this was all pre-digital anyways. So
Right.
That was the only option then, but that was part of it. And in terms of other mediums, I mean, I do some drawing, but it's not like, I consider photography my serious kind of artistic medium, and I write, of course. So those two mediums I think of as photography and as writing, as sometimes they work together, or sometimes they're sort of serious mediums. But I definitely draw on a lot of other artistic forms.
Do you ever blend them with writing and photography? Or
I do, absolutely. Yeah, I have started to do that a lot more. And I had, I'd done an exhibit at the SMUSH Gallery a couple months ago. And that was the first time I really thought very overtly about, taking images and, using lines of like almost creating poetry to coincide with the images. And so I would like to do a lot more of that. I mean, I've done some stuff even when I was in the MFA, and with this memoir, sort of is a play between the two forms. So, but now it seems much more natural to me to continue doing that, and it's very, very satisfying.
What or who would you say is your greatest inspiration as an artist?
I mean, in terms of photography, I really, I think I had said this earlier in a write-up, Henri Carter Bresson, who's the very famous photographer, was really the person I think who kind of, looking at his work, I feel like shaped a lot of my vision of photographs. He has this concept of the decisive moment, where you take images, really trying to capture a frame with a particular moment, and didn't believe in cropping. Like, he was very different time period, but I think studying his images is really what influenced me when I started really getting into photography. And I had a mentor, a Philadelphia-based photographer, Leandre Jackson, who then I worked with a lot in terms of really developing photography, thinking of it as a fine art, working on exhibitions and so on. So I think have been really crucial mentors in ways. Of course, Bresson I never met, but I admired him, as many other, I'm sure, photographers have also draw from his work, and then have
right. And do you edit your photos?
I do edit them. I probably do more so now. I think now, of course, it changed. I mean, when I first started taking photographs, everything was in the dark room, and so there is, maybe, I feel like there's somewhat of a limit. I mean, you can play with images, of course, but then as things have moved towards Photoshop, there's a lot more possibility for amplifying and images. So yeah, in that sense, I still do try to think of the images as somewhat. It's a hard question, because I want them to still resemble the initial image, amplified. So I don't tend to try to crop or do too much, or try to, in that sense, play with it. But definitely all the tools of Photoshop that are available, I do rely on those.
Right. And what do you feel is specifically unique about your voice as an artist?
I feel like maybe the value of my work, I think, is really, I feel like I try to convey beauty through images that are maybe not always seen as beautiful or as not conventionally beautiful. Like I feel like that I am kind of drawn to, and that's what interests me as an artist to push forward in my work. So I'm more interested in what other people have to say about my work, to be honest. Like I do it, which is why I sort of really like sharing it in these public spaces, because I'm to hear what people, how they perceive it, because I often just take things that I find interesting, and it's hard for me to describe even why.
And what do you want your viewers to take away from your artwork?
I think it's just an interest in the places and the people that I think I'm trying to capture. One of the things I did when I was really getting into photography is I would spend a lot of time looking at images. And so I really kind of want to have images that people are spending their time looking at and are thinking about and reflecting on and are making us stop. I mean, it's a little bit harder nowadays, I think, with a lot of the way that we have social media and so forth. I feel like where our minds are very quick and so on. But for me, a lot of my practice was just spending a lot of time staring at things, and I feel like a great honor to have somebody do that with the images that I've taken.
Right, yeah. That whole idea of just contemplating something, right?
Yeah.
Just sitting and taking it in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've kind of, I mean, I feel that personally too. I don't do that as much as I used to, and I think that's kind of a loss. So I'm trying to return to that a little bit more deliberately.
Yeah. Right, yeah. I definitely agree. I feel like a lot of people nowadays have a very short attention span, so they're not able to like focus on something and just take it in.
Exactly. It's like a lot more about the quantity than the quality. And that's true, I think, with photography too, which is one of the struggles I've had a little bit with the digital, because you can take multiple and there's no cost to it, in a way that when I used to shoot with a lot more with film, which I've started to return back to, is you have to be very deliberate about every shot, because it's, there's only so much reel and it takes so much to process it. And so it was a very thoughtful process.
And out of all your artworks, which is your favorite and which do you have a particular attachment to?
I don't know that I have a favorite. I was thinking about this question, but I do, the image, The Women in the Village, and like, even when I see it, I just kind of stop and I look at it. And so I don't know if it's a favorite, but I do think of it as an image that I still think is an important image for me.
Right. Do you have any like little bit of detail on how you took that or how you captured that moment?
Well, I think in that, so the image is of just like, it's set in a village, and it's a group of several women and children.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Part of it, I think, is, and people may not realize it, is that especially there's a lot of images I've taken that are very, you don't have a lot of time. And so it wasn't really a posed image. It just was an image where there might have been people standing. And then I knew also they were not people who were used to being necessarily having their image taken. And so I didn't want to suddenly create too much attention on that. So it was having to do it very quickly. So it was thinking about composition and quickly and light and all the things that go in.
Right.
Which is really challenging. So that thought process and the quickness of that is what you start to realize is what the skill is behind taking these kinds of photographs and knowing to do that in spaces. So, whether it's, I don't think I consider my images, I mean, they're somewhat documentary, but I think of them as, documentary fine art, but it is a lot of that. It's like going into places and suddenly trying to get that moment in the midst of a lot of things that are distilling it and having, a person focus on, a viewer focus on that particular moment. So I think the challenges of photography is you're having.
Right. And with your photography, do you just spontaneously take it, or do you like ask people before you take the picture of them?
I'd say for the most part, I like to do it spontaneously. Not to say that I haven't had posed images, but I tend to not want to do that. I tend to, even if, they know that they know I'm with the camera. Sometimes people are aware, sometimes people are not, but I like images where people they're not thinking about that I'm taking an image of them. So I have done stage stuff, but I find it more interesting to do than not staged.
So has the COVID-19 pandemic reshaped your process at all? And has it impacted your work in any way?
I feel like I've maybe not had as much chance to do as much artwork as I'd wanted to, but it has, like I said, that kind of slowing down in some ways has been maybe the effect of it, which is a good thing. And of course, a lot of the images I take are of people and of places, so we've been limited in that sense. But slowing down, I think, is an overall positive thing in some ways for me.
Thank you, Anisa. I don't have any more questions for you, but however, if you have anything else you'd like to share, feel free to add.
No, I appreciate all the work that you all are doing and creating art in this time and finding ways for artists to share their work. I feel like that's very motivating and really like wonderful for us to have these spaces and these opportunities.
Once again, Anisa, thank you so much for speaking with us all today and sharing your insights and your creations. Thank you.
All right, thank you.